Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of my Lilo and Stitch remake review. If you haven't seen the first part, then I highly recommend that you watch it before you watch this video in order to better understand everything that I talk about in this video. For those of you that have already seen the first part, let us proceed forward. So I've previously acknowledged that this movie isn't as terrible necessarily as the other live action remakes. That does not make it a good movie. And I think it's only fair that we talk about the elephant in the room. The changes that this movie makes to the original Lilo and Stitch. Now, one of the biggest reasons why the Snow White remake was controversial was because of the many changes it made to the original story of the original animated Snow White. I mean, obviously, there were a lot of things that contributed to the movie's bad reputation, including the fact that the movie itself was bad, but having it deviate so heavily from the original animated movie did not help matters out at all. And so I looked at this Lilo and Stitch remake as being like the complete opposite. I was like, there's no fucking way they would make this movie different from the original. Just make the exact same movie, except it's in live action, and that's it. Call it a day, you get your easy $1 billion just like that. I know people are gonna be like, oh, but if they just made the movie exactly the same as the original, then there would be no reason for it to exist at all, and I mean, yeah, that is true, I'll admit it, but I think people would be more okay with a remake that's just exactly the same thing as the original, instead of having something like this where there are changes to the movie. And a lot of these changes prove to be very controversial. So in both the original animated movie and this live action remake, you have Jumba and Pleakley on Earth trying to find Stitch. In the original animated movie, they wore these really terrible looking human disguises. The joke was they wore terrible disguises and yet everyone thought they were just normal humans. In this remake, though, they completely get rid of that by just having them be normal humans. They get this cloning machine or something. They scan a person and it's like they inhabit that body, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. They just take the form of real, like, actual humans. I think it's like the actors that play them. I don't know. Not only does this take away from a lot of the comedy that was in the original animated movie, but it also proved to be controversial, as in the original animated movie, Pleakley dressed up as a woman. He was disguised as a woman. And so I read something that there were people in like the LGBT community that looked at this as being like unintentional like drag representation, unintentional trans representation, stuff like that. And that's just completely gone in this remake. Now, this is already pretty bad on its own, but then it becomes even worse when you find out that the director of the movie came forward saying he tried to include Pleakley in a dress in this remake. And just like that, backlash would ensue. Now, there are two theories that could explain why they changed this joke for the live-action remake. One of which has become the commonly accepted reason, but the other one is actually not all that unlikely either. The commonly accepted reason is this is Disney pandering towards right-wing people in light of Trump becoming president again. This is Disney being well aware of the unintentional trans icon that Pleakley became from the original animated movie and just removing that from this remake in order to appeal to right-wing people who will go on and on about how Disney is woke and whatever, which is a massive blow for the LGBT community. I mean, LGBT people probably already know this by now, but corporations do not care about them, unfortunately, and I really doubt Disney especially would care about them, but, you know, it's still. The other potential reason that I've seen quite a few people bring up, and you know, I don't want to discredit the other theory, but this could be possible as well. Now, for a bit of backstory, this movie was originally supposed to be on Disney Plus. This was originally supposed to be a direct-to-Disney Plus movie, before Disney decided all of a sudden to just make this a theatrical movie. Most likely for the same reason they took that Moana Disney Plus show and turned it into a theatrical sequel. We all know by now Disney had a very catastrophic 2023. That's pretty much a part of history by now. And I want to imagine they were desperate to have something to make people forget about that catastrophic 2023. And so they ended up taking these two things and making them theatrical instead of being Disney Plus exclusives. And, well, much to our dismay and much to their amusement, it's working out for them. Moana 2 made $1 billion despite being a really mediocre generic movie, and this movie is very likely to make $1 billion at the box office because, I mean, come on, it's a live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. You would have to be an idiot to assume this wouldn't be successful, regardless of how much you hate this movie. Because this was originally supposed to be a streaming movie, that means that it doesn't really have a very high budget. This movie only has a budget of $100 million, and that's it. And I want to imagine, because of the relatively low budget that this movie has, perhaps they didn't want to exceed the budget by using more CGI for Jumba and Pleakley. Make it so that instead of having them be disguised as, like, you know, poorly dressed up humans, they're just disguised as actual, like, humans. Like, they're played by real life actors in order to save the budget, in order to, you know, save the CGI. Because otherwise, if they kept what they did in the original movie, then they would have to, like, increase the budget and add in even more CGI into the movie. And I guess Disney didn't want to do that, so we got this instead. That could very well be the case, honestly. Then again, though, I feel like if that was the case, then the director would admit that's why he couldn't put Pleakley in a dress into the live-action remake. He just says, "I tried," and that's it. I'm sure he would go and say, like, oh, it's because of the budget, we wanted to save the budget, we wanted to reduce CGI, whatever. The fact that he just says, "I tried," and that's it, is pretty sus, I'm not gonna lie. It's very likely that Disney cut this out of the movie in order to appeal to right-wing people, but, you know, the budget theory isn't really out of the question either. It's not impossible. I know people are gonna get mad at me for saying this, but I think it's for the better that Jumba and Pleakley are humans for most of the movie, because as I mentioned before, the CGI designs for them look really bad. They managed to nail Stitch's design, and then they just screwed up for Jumba and Pleakley. The less we have to see these two characters on screen, the better, if you ask me. The other changes that this movie has made to the original are considerably less easy to defend. So there was a character in the original movie named Pt.2, who I guess he was supposed to be the main villain of the movie. I don't know. Again, I haven't seen the original movie in forever, so if I get anything about the original movie wrong, I apologize. Pt.2 is, I guess, the main villain of the original movie, and he's just completely absent from this movie for some reason. I believe they said that, like, there was no way for him to translate into this photorealistic CGI. I remember reading something like that was their excuse. I don't know. Clearly doesn't work because, you know, these two are in the movie again. And as a result of that, someone else has to take the role of being the main villain of the movie. So who's the main villain in this movie? It's Jumba. Yes, Jumba. When I was watching this movie, I remember being confused out of my mind in the latter half of the movie. I remember thinking, wait, isn't there supposed to be like I noticed there was that character that was missing, Pt.2, but then I also noticed, like, wasn't there like a spaceship chase in the original film, like for the climax of the original film? There was like a spaceship chase, there was like a red spaceship and a yellow spaceship, like I remember that from the original movie, and that was just not in the movie at all. I remember just mindlessly watching the movie, not really like closely examining it, and I see like the ending of the movie, which, don't worry, we're gonna get to it very soon. And I saw, like, Pleakley is with the other main characters of the movie, but there's no Jumba at all. And I was like, wait, where's the other guy? What the f***? isn't he supposed to be a good guy as well? And then I go home and I do more research and it turns out, uh-oh, no, they made him the villain for some reason. Well, okay, there is a reason, but it's a stupid reason. Now, I haven't seen the original movie in a long time, but even I think this is a stupid decision to do. It's like, imagine if for the Lion King remake, they remove Scar. Scar is not in the movie, and instead Timon is the villain. Like, you still have Timon and Pumbaa together for most of the movie, but then Timon all of a sudden is like an antagonist, a villain for the movie. It would make no sense at all. It's practically inevitable that this thing is going to get sequels, and here's hoping that maybe by some chance they'll listen to the backlash surrounding Jumba being a villain, and they could have him go on like a hypothetical redemption arc for this hypothetical sequel, and introduce whatever villains the sequels had. Like, wasn't there like a yellow rabbit or something like that in one of the sequels, like one of the direct-to-video sequels, or in the cartoon? I don't remember. I vaguely remember there was like a yellow rabbit-esque character. I have no idea. Let's face it, this thing is going to get a sequel, whether we like it or not. With this movie, we are now significantly closer to Disney doing the inevitable. Disney has until May 26, 2026 to put out a live-action remake of one of their direct-to-video sequels. If you know, you know. And now, it is time for us to talk about the most controversial change that this movie has made to the original. The elephant in the room, if you will, when it comes to this remake. A big source of conflict in both the original movie and this remake is whether Nani, Lilo's older sister, is able to keep custody of her. The movie ends with Nani being allowed to keep Lilo in her custody. And we all know the famous line, Ohana means family, family means no one gets left behind. Yeah, that's just completely thrown out the window in this remake. Now, I don't know if this is in the original movie or not, but in this remake, there's this subplot of Nani wanting to go to, like, this university for marine biology in California. I've seen people say this doesn't make any sense at all because Hawaii has a college that's dedicated to marine biology, and it's, like, one of the best colleges possible for it. Which makes sense, you know? Why the would Hawaii not have one of the best marine biology courses? It doesn't make any damn sense. It's an island surrounded by water. Why would it not have the best marine biology courses? So in this remake, there's a new character that's introduced, this old, like, neighbor lady for Lilo and Nani. And the end of the movie very controversially changes the ending to have Nani give up her guardianship of Lilo to this new neighbor character, allowing for her to go to college, completely getting rid of the Ohana means family message that was so prevalent in the original movie and is even brought up from time to time in this remake. I don't know how much sense this is going to make, but I feel like the fact that they do acknowledge the Ohana means family stuff combined with this different ending, that kind of makes this even worse, honestly. It would have been bad enough if the movie just completely abandoned the Ohana means family stuff. Like, they never mention it once, they never include it, they never bring it up at all in the entire movie, combined with this different ending. That would have been bad enough. But the fact that they include the Ohana means family stuff, they have the characters acknowledge it and say it, they have this integral core part of the original animated movie in this remake, and they have it juxtaposed with this new ending that just seemingly goes against that message. I'd say that's even worse, honestly. And then the movie decides to do this, like, weird thing where it's like, it turns out Nani is able to see Lilo still. After thwarting Jumba's plans, they get this portal gun from him, and yes, it is a straight-up portal gun. It works exactly how you would expect it to work. I don't know if this was in the original movie or not, but if it wasn't, then, well, the Disney Valve lawsuit is gonna be really crazy, guys. I can't wait. There's a post-credit scene where Lilo uses the portal gun to teleport Nani so that she could go from her dorm to the house. And so she's able to visit Lilo at any point in time. Unfortunately for Disney, this would not be enough to stop the massive backlash, the massive controversy surrounding the decision to change the movie's ending. As I mentioned before, I was not expecting this to be a controversial movie at all. You would have to try really hard to make Lilo and Stitch controversial. I thought this was going to be the complete opposite of the Snow White remake, where the Snow White remake was filled to the brim with controversies galore, and then this movie is just controversy-free, because how the do you make Lilo and Stitch controversial? Well, I mean, by extension, you could ask, how the do you make Snow White controversial? But they managed to succeed in doing that in so many ways that I didn't think were possible. But Lilo and Stitch, it's like, no, there's no way. You can't make Lilo and Stitch controversial. Somehow, they did it. Somehow. I was expecting this to be the most inoffensive live-action Disney remake, and instead it's one of the most controversial ones. God damn it, this is why we cannot have nice things.